Recording in progress.
Okay, Mr. Tech, are you able to see the agenda?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, for participating in the meeting this evening. I see that we have our 6 panelists, and then we also have 10 attendees. We have an agenda there. You can see the 5 items. And the first item I'll go over is our LAVA program that we currently have for this year. The grade levels, classes, number of students, cost, billing, etc. When we started with the pandemic and started our 2021 school year, we had 504 students that registered for LAVA, which is the Lehighton Area Virtual Academy. And originally our cost prior years was about $4,500 per student. This year, the IU and Accelerate Education came up with some plans and financial deals to help alleviate the costs for districts. And that ended up allowing us to have some great savings and still provide opportunities for the students. What happened for this school year, our secondary level, which is grades 9 through 12, we were able to purchase a license for every student. And that was at the cost of $44 a student. And we had purchased there roughly 740 licenses. So that was a total of around $32,560. In addition, then, we had what was called blended learning, the grades K through 8, and that we had approximately 268 students that started, and that was at approximately $158 per student, and then that came out to a total of $42,344. Now, that was just for licenses. Then you had an upfront cost of $8,000, which is normal every year. And then we had the fee, the technology fee, which encompasses the $30 reimbursement per month for the internet, and then also support and warranty and replacement if any of the computers or the Chromebooks would be damaged. That comes out to $287.50 per quarter. So then for a secondary student, and we're billed 3 quarters, you take that $287.50 times the 3, and that was $862.50, and we had the $44 license fee. So it was approximately $906.50 for our secondary students. Middle school and elementary, again, our licensing fee was $158 per student. Again, we had the $287.50 per quarter, which was the technology fee. And again, that included the $30 per month internet fee reimbursement to the parents. And that cost came out to $1,020.50. As of 6/4, when we go to our pay period, which will be ending on 6/4, we will have used $282,812.75 of district salaries and the timesheets that we've been keeping track of the teachers at the middle school and the high school that have been helping with LAVA and supplying those classes to the students. So we have $282,812.75, which was salaries, again, and also the timesheet payment. We had our first quarter fee to the IU, which was $89,590. And then we had, and 77 of that was all our basic like license fees. And then the second quarter, which went from September to November, that was at $114,725. And now they are adjusting our third quarter because currently we're down to about 160 students in LAVA from the original 504. So you can see that even if we would have had it at our original 4,500, and as of the end of November, we still had 400 kids in LAVA, we would have been looking at roughly about 1.8 million. So as of now to date, we have $487,127.75, which we have incurred as expenses for LAVA this year due to the pandemic. We're looking to see like the third quarter and fourth quarter, those bills should be significantly less because again, it'll just be the fees for the technology fees. And like I said, those numbers have dropped from where we originally had 400 down to about 170, 175. And now currently we're at 159. So that's the breakup. That is for this year. And again, we went to Accelerant. It wasn't the same program that we used in the past. We're already making plans for next year to take a look at cost and different items, things pertaining to that for the year next year. That'll be going back to basically our original plan that we always used. And there, again, we'd be looking at the cost would roughly be about $4,500 for secondary. And then we're taking a look to see with our teachers possibly at elementary. Again, that's all still in the planning phase. And that cost would be roughly about $2,300 to $2,500. So again, you know, we are taking a look at that to provide. That would go back to where they would have a greater selection of electives, supplies, and things of that nature. And again, a lot of that constraints this year was due to the pandemic. But I do want to thank the administrators and the teachers, especially for the flexibility and also for the elementary teachers taking that over and running that whole program, doing the best they can, trying to provide for the parents, trying to give the kids the flexibility of what they can do, and also to help to walk parents through some of the problems that they were having. So those are some of the things that we had there for the LAVA. If anyone has any
Tim, your microphone is.
Okay, I'm going to switch over.
Excuse me, Larry? Larry? Can you hear me, Larry, while he's working on that? Larry? Rita, are you on the call?
Give me a minute, David. I'm trying to get unmuted. Thank you very much.
No problem. So, Larry, while Mr. Tech's solving the technical difficulties, wouldn't it be respectful to the committee and the board that if he's presenting this much data, including numbers and information, that it would have been presented to the board in writing so we could follow along and read it while he's speaking? Isn't that just common sense? Isn't it a professional way to do such a meeting?
Yes, I would think he could have shared that information on the screen as he was going through it.
I agree. And same for the next three items. If we could just email it to us so that we can do it, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize. My computer went on the fit, so I'm outside at Mrs. Karpowitz's computer. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. I missed the end there with Mr. Bradley.
Yeah, Tim, all we're asking for is that you email that information, what you were going over.
Okay.
The breakdowns of the costs and those types of things out. That's all. Thank you.
Sure. No problem. That'll be fine. Okay. The next item there, then, we would have the update on the SALO program, the survey that's currently out there with Mrs. Kistler and Mrs. Cartwright. So, Mrs. Kistler, any information on that, please?
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And again, this is information that I can also send out to the board. We don't have all of our, I didn't turn the survey off yet. We're still accepting responses. So once it's completed, I can send out a summary of everything that was collected. So far to date, we only have 52 responses. The majority of those responses, about 90% of them, were completed by parents. They were asked a question of how the Lehighton Elementary Center, how effectively we're meeting the social emotional needs of students. And it was split right down the middle. The majority of the respondents said that they feel like we're doing an okay job of meeting their social emotional learning needs, which is obviously something that we're working towards. Later on in the survey, it asks areas that parents and community members still feel like we need to work on with our students in the elementary center. That came out resulting that parents and community members feel that self-management and responsible decision-making are the areas of utmost concern at this point in time. So we're using that information to work on selecting topics, and for the beginning stages of lesson planning, to start looking at what's going to be presented to our students and the way that it's going to be presented to them as we're introducing social emotional learning strategies into the classroom for next school year. Our next main goal, then, I've been working with contacts at the IU, is to establish some professional development for our staff for the upcoming school year in the fall, just to give them some more background information on social emotional learning and the role that they play in the classroom, to really make sure that this is an impactful program for our students.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Kistler. Any questions or concerns or items for Mrs. Kistler?
I have one.
Go ahead, Mr. Bradley.
Does Rita or Larry want to go first?
No, thank you.
Okay. So, Mrs. Kistler, you did a survey and you collected the raw data, as what I'll call it, and then you are creating a summary that you're going to share with the board. It would be respectful and in all good form to provide the supplemental raw data to the board as well, so that the full transparency of the survey can be provided to the management of this district and the government agency responsible for these decision making. So we'd appreciate that as well. I also wanted to ask that during the negotiation, a stipend was provided to all the staff of $1,000. And it appears that we didn't take the opportunity to attach a responsibility for that stipend that could have fit within this SEL program, where these individual staff members could be educated and implement some of the benefits of this SEL program as part of their responsibilities in exchange for some of those funds that these local community members are providing. Was that even addressed, or did you get an opportunity to try to leverage that opportunity with the district and your union to try to implement some of this SEL during that negotiation process, or was that missed?
Mr. Bradley, there was, first of all, negotiations Ms. Kistler was not involved in.
I understand that. I asked her. I'm looking at it as an opportunity. She's one of the staff members. She's interested in SEL. We're passionate. Mrs. Courtwright was passionate about SEL. I'm passionate about the SEL program. We want to know and recognize that the more people that are aware of how it works, aware of the skills and processes, the better we provide for our students. So if we missed that, and regretfully I missed it as well because I was not part of that negotiation, it's a failure for our students. We should have taken advantage of that opportunity, and the fact that it was missed is an error, and these errors should be transparently exposed so that I don't make them again, and then we attempt to correct them. So if we didn't do it, shame on me. But if we did do it, I'd just like to know what the reaction was if it was tried. So apparently you're saying, Mrs. Kistler, you did not use that opportunity to help implement our SEL goals?
She was not part of the negotiation, Mr. Bradley.
I know, but I asked her if she used her. She didn't have to be part of the negotiation. She knows who was on the negotiation. She's part of that group that was negotiating. Did she use it to implement on her side? I'd like to ask her, sir. I don't know why you're answering for her. She's in a committee meeting.
Let me go back to the first question that you had asked about seeing raw data. So the way that this survey was formulated was through a Google form. So basically at the end of the time when it's completed and we stop accepting responses, it generates raw data in the form of pie charts and bar graphs, which I will absolutely share out with the board, as well as a summary of the information. So when I did speak about the summary, it was the summary that it automatically gives you in terms of what the responses said, in terms of, again, those charts and graphs that Google Forms offer to you automatically. So you can absolutely, the board can have that unaltered the way that I can see it on my end. As far as negotiations and the stipend that was offered to staff members, that is not something that I can comment on, as I was not, as Mr. Cleaver said, involved in the negotiation process.
Okay, thank you. And back to the data. So whereas it's important to get that pie chart and the information from a managerial standpoint, we don't only, most managers would not only investigate the mean to the data, but it also looks at the outliers. And it's the furthest outliers that are the most prevalent to making command decisions based upon what's happening within the community. For instance, the mean of number of people that stop at the red light coming across the bridge might be 99%. But the 1% that failed to stop at the stoplight that caused a multi-car accident and the death of individuals would be investigated very heavily to identify how to prevent such a tragedy in the future. So that's why we're looking at all the data, not just the summary. And even if it's behind the scenes from that service that you used, since we went through the effort to collect it, we should have capture all that data. Thank you. And I apologize. We should have had the foresight to recognize that during that negotiation process, we should have met with the union leaders and saw it as an opportunity to not only implement our broad SEL program, which would be beneficial to the entire staff of our and entire community for that matter. The more we educate people to this process, the better off the community is. I think we missed that opportunity, and I'll fall on my sword for that. I tried my best to get some things done, but obviously was not successful. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or concerns or items with the SEL program? Okay, then the third item we have is the ATSI, the school improvement plan for our high school. And I know Mrs. Holland and Mr. Brown have been working on that diligently. And I'll turn it over to Mrs. Holland with some updates there for the ATS plan for the next school year.
Hi, good evening. So as Mr. Tack said, the ATSI plan, which is the additional targeted support improvement plan, the high school was placed on that in the fall of, actually the winter of 2018, when we arrived at Lehighton High School, 17-18 school year, based on one subgroup falling below the threshold. The plan has been up for the past 2 years. We continue to edit the plan. The additions, unfortunately, that we'll be making this year are not a whole lot because we lack the data. So when we made additions to the plan last year, the goal was to look at the percentage of students that were taking our Keystone exams, CDTs. Of course, COVID happened last year and blew all our data apart because students did not take the Keystone's exams and they were exempted. CDTs was something that was training was provided to our staff last June. We did start with doing CDT training with a subgroup population, which was our special education population that did not meet that threshold this year. So students in special education have been taking those with the IEPs, have been getting the CDT assessments done. They've had 2 probes. Of course, we went back to a block type schedule, which has created a little bit more of a challenge to collect that data. Because as you know, we should really do 3 thresholds. And with the block, you only have them for a semester. So students were assessed twice with CDTs for that small subgroup. And we have some data on that. So the changes this year will really, again, be looking at the percentage of students taking the Lit Keystone showing growth, Algebra 1 Keystone showing growth, and Biology Keystone showing growth in that small subgroup population of our special needs students. As I said, there's no data from last year. This year's data with the Keystone, we all know students are taking the Keystone. However, the data is not being used against them. So we'll have some of that baseline and we'll compare that with the CDTs and see if we see some growth. And then we'll track that going into next year again. Questions with that?
Yeah, Susan, what was
Yes, Mr. Bradley.
The group that was falling under performance standards that got us into this adventure in 17-18? What was the group?
Again, it was the subgroup of special needs population.
Yeah. Okay. And if we're failing to help them meet that standard, is there anything that this board can do to help with that process? Because I'm seeing coming across our desk that we get litigation for special needs students as well, where we are, I use the term at difficulty, presenting their entire free and educational benefits. And then we get challenged with suits because of it. Is there there's a trend in that regard, but is there any other issues that this board is missing for those students?
Well, I think that's a pretty global question, a good question, but
Yeah,
a global question. You're asking where the gaps are really K to 12, you know, in any population, whether but this population, again, that we were identified for was the small group of special needs students at that time. And of course, the group that was identified, as I said, was from the 17-18 group. Those kids are really through school at this point. So now you're looking at new trend lines, right? You're looking at new students, new data. And we're going to continue, as you just heard Mrs. Kissler's our director of special ed, continue to work together as a cohesive team to really target those areas. I know at the elementary level, they've started with, specific trainings in reading, which again, ultimately, as they move up through grade levels, we'll see hopefully growth in that, because from the time I've always said this, from the time they enter kindergarten to the time they leave, we want to see growth no matter what. So I don't have a specific area for you right now because that's a pretty global question, but obviously that's something we can look at and we can see what we're targeting. Again, the high school issue is we get them at the end, right? So that curve is now we're looking at data, and now the last 2 years we really haven't had that data. We implemented a new schedule last year, which I thought we were getting some pretty good results on. We didn't have of course, we don't have that to compare because there was no testing. We had AP tests, and our AP tests last year were really well. Students did really well, and that could be for many reasons. It could have been they had the courses for a year. It could have been College Board provided a lot more resources when COVID happened that got placed in our hands, but that's not the subgroup I'm looking at. So it's about timing, it's about scheduling, and we went with the block because we know it was a challenge for our students and for any student, whether our students or students elsewhere, to carry 7 course loads in a virtual world, right? So we did go back to the block. We're fortunately, I say staying in the block for next year just because of circumstances and whether kids are still going to be moving in and out. And then again, we're going to look at what's best practice for our students moving forward with that, with the schedule change to go back to more of like a traditional, maybe seven period schedule. I know a big push of the district is SEL, Mr. Bradley, so social emotional learning. And I would agree to that as a former social emotional support teacher. But there's many aspects of that, and that looks very different at all levels, K to 12. That we can focus on.
So what I'm getting at, I'm looking at the.
So you're looking at, can I
30,000
provide you with areas to target that we can make improvements for our district with special ed, correct?
No. So I'm looking at part of that, and I'll go with that. You're correct. But the thing I'm really looking for, what I'm asking for, is this 30,000-foot view of the problem.
Right.
We were not the only school in the state of Pennsylvania that
Be targeted.
that ended up on this target program.
You're correct.
Of the 500, there was only a little less than 200 of them, and of those, the bulk of them that failed in this regard was failing as a government school. We were failing our students with disabilities, and that was the lion's share of those couple hundred schools that had failures in this regard. So since those other schools also had this problem, and we had the problem, and we haven't, it's hard to rectify and prove we rectified it, but because of the COVID situation. But I'm just wondering how many other schools are falling off this. We're able to succeed in their efforts to be above the standard. Because these additional targeted support and improvement areas, the primary ones were English learners and special needs. Students with disabilities. And
Correct.
for the state of Pennsylvania, for the state of Pennsylvania to be failing in that regard, we're the individual government agency, the individual government board for our little section of the world, that we have a responsibility, and it seems like we're not meeting it. The economically disadvantaged, we survived that filter, but the students with disabilities is an important part of our societal responsibility, and how so many are missing it. I think we have to take a look at it from a big picture view, and I think we should have that discussion at length to understand how are these individuals with disabilities not getting the needs they need, why we're going to court so often, why we have nothing going to the Office of Dispute Resolution, and why we're not sitting down as a think group or a think tank to say, okay, what are the problems? Let's look at the 5 whys, right? Why does it happen? Where did it happen? And look at the outliers and look at individual students at a board meeting or inside of a executive session or inside of a committee meeting like this, where we're using student numbers, but can identify individual concerns, because it is those outliers that we might be able to help correct the bigger picture. I'm not exactly sure why the state of Pennsylvania is failing so miserably to help people with student disabilities, but it is very evident when you look at the spreadsheet and the raw data that was provided by the Department of Education for this, which I'd like you to share with the board. Did you get a copy of that? And were you able to share that with the board, the spreadsheet, targeted schools?
I'm not sure what spreadsheet you're referring to, sir.
I'll share it. I'll share it across the aisle then. I was hoping we would have in-person meetings because there's so much data to go over, and it's pretty difficult on these Zooms. But I will email it to the team, and when you see the number of schools that failed in that area, it's systemic. We got to fix it. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item that we have there is the update on our kindergarten registration, and then also some excellent programs. I know that Mr. Seblin and Mrs. Volsky are putting together down at the elementary with the Haggerty for reading, dyslexia, and MTSS, and hopefully trying to get our kids as soon as possible, catch them, give them the good foundation to move forward. So at this time then, Mr. Seblin?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Tack. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So I'm going to give an update on our kindergarten registration. So the current number for kindergarten registration stands at 155 students. Those are all students and parents that have registered through our system. And we haven't seen all 155 students come through the elementary center and participate in their in-person registration and testing process yet. We just did another 7 this morning, and we're looking at doing another half a day with about 8 more students and their parents. So it's gone very, very well. I'm extremely pleased. I had mentioned at the last meeting, we were able to do it in person. We were not able to do that last year. I think the parents overwhelmingly had a good experience as far as, being able to come in, see the building, meet with our office staff. They spent time with a kindergarten teacher. The children did, and then the parents talked to the teacher afterwards. The parents also got to spend time with the secretaries, asking specific questions about paperwork that had to come in, or, the demographics of the school. Parents also spent time with the school nurses to talk about any type of, medication issues, or if there were any type of medical concerns that the parents had. And then finally, while the parents were waiting for the children to finish up with their tests, they were able to spend some time with our school guidance counselors. And the guidance counselors talked about the different programs that we have available in our school, what the first couple of weeks of kindergarten will look like. And then we always try to give a little summation of how the kids did when they were working with the teacher, and give some suggestions of things to work on from now and over the summer up until the beginning of kindergarten. So I really believe that the parents appreciate that. And again, just even myself being in the office, welcoming the parents to come in and having some conversations with them. It's always really nice to talk to them, and we really like to ease their anxiety a little bit, especially if the parents that have their first kid coming into our school and into our district. So that went really, really well. I have to give a lot of kudos to our office staff, like, again, the secretaries, the nurses, the guidance counselors, the kindergarten teachers, Mrs. Tammy Tilley, and the school psychologist. As far as any children that are coming in that had early intervention services, she's meeting with them. She's talking to them. We have a lot of kids coming into our program, coming into kindergarten, that have some pretty heavy duty needs already at a young age of 4 or 5 years old. So we do try and work together and try and bridge that gap between the services that they had prior to coming in to elementary school, and making sure that they have those supports in place to make a smooth transition. So I'm really, really pleased. I expect that number to fluctuate a little bit over the summer, as it typically would. I had mentioned in some past meetings that, anywhere between, 10 to 12 to maybe upwards of 15 students plus or minus over the summer. We always have kids moving out of the district, and we always have kids coming into the district. The toughest ones to place are always those families that come in right before the school starts. We do try and get everything in place well beforehand, but I do feel that we are definitely ready, to welcome our newest little Indians into our district come the beginning of September. So again, that number right now stands at 155. That's pretty close to where we typically are at this time, maybe a couple kids ahead, but we'll be ready for them come September. As far as MTSS, Hegarty, and Dyslexia, I just want to talk briefly about some of the programs. So really, our primary teachers have been trained in a number of areas as far as teaching phonemic awareness, the building blocks and the foundations of reading to our youngest students. The teachers have been participating in trainings over the course of the last 5 and 6 years, specifically at CLIU 21. We participated in letters training, and that's basically a philosophy of really how to teach beginning readers to recognize letters and letter sounds, putting them together, understanding grammar and phonemic rules. So we have a number of teachers trained in letters. Over the past 2 years, we actually participated in something called the Dyslexia Expansion Pilot Project, which was, we worked hand in hand with Patan, And the first year was really a whole lot of training. So we had classroom teachers trained, we had reading specialists trained, our speech therapists were trained, special ed staff was trained, I was trained, Mrs. Kistler was trained, all in this dyslexia pilot program. And really what that means is just different skill teaching programs to work with the kids in class by teachers and peripheral staff, whether that's a paraprofessional, special education teacher, even our OT person from the IU, Mrs. Ann Wells, works with this program. And just, again, teaching kids how to practice and learn how to read. So the second year, this year, the Dyslexia Expansion Pilot Project was more formulated and it was more hands-on. And again, unfortunately, with the restrictions of COVID, it really cut into, that pilot program. And when I say that, we had a direct connection. We had a person through Patan, Mrs. Donna Halpin, who's worked with our district before through the IU. She worked very, very closely with our teachers and our staff in providing direct coaching, observations, suggestions with our teachers. Unfortunately, she wasn't, the plan was for her to really come into the school and be a direct connect. But with some of the mandates and our safety plan, we didn't really have a whole lot of outsiders coming into our building. But we worked around it. She did a great job. Mrs. Donna Halpin through Patan provided weekly professional development for our teachers. She provided lots of in-depth conversations and resources for our teachers to use when using this dyslexia expansion pilot. And it worked really, really well. To go along with that, we also used a Hegarty model within our ELA lessons. It's a philosophy through Dr. Michael Hegarty. And what that really entails is, again, practice every day, very repetitive type of practice. There's lots of hand movements that go with practicing sounds, practicing letters, practicing blends. The teachers actually had to work within a 40-minute lesson plan block to use that Hegarty model. And again, they did a really, really nice job with it. And for some of our teachers, that was really a much different type of teaching style that they've been used to in the past. And they embraced it. And we had some very honest conversations about what we thought of it. But the kids seemed to really, really grasp on to, different types of rules as far as, the beginning building blocks of reading. And it worked extremely well. And I would, once we are able to open up the building, I would really encourage people to come in, especially our administrators and even some of our guest readers. We've had guest readers in the past. Even some board members have been guest readers in the past. But just to come and see the teachers, practicing their craft and having the kids really learn directly from them. It really is something to see. And I think, if you would see that Hegarty model being taught in the classroom, you would be extremely impressed. So now we're into another year where we're looking forward to next year. We actually just recently applied for a grant. It's called the ECRI grant, and ECRI stands for Enhanced Core Reading Instruction or Intervention. It works for tier 2, tier 3 kids. And what that really means is, again, it's more of a philosophy, and it's a program where we're really providing lots of ways for kids to understand and learn how to read. Because in kindergarten, our focus is phonemic awareness, learning the letters, learning the letter sounds, being able to put them together, being able to segment words. Because as they move into first grade and then in second grade, it becomes more independent. And we want to really have them be able to read fluently and not have to sound out those letters anymore. Because then ultimately we're working towards comprehension and reading, really strong reading fluency and being able to really very automatically understand grammar rules and phonemic awareness, where understanding that when there's a magic E on the end of a word, it makes the A sound a long A, and our kids really are able to put that together. And I just think that our plan has been really to focus and hone in on phonemic awareness areas for our kids, specifically in the primary levels. Now, what we're looking at doing, as we move forward with this, to ultimately bridge that gap from, the primary side of the elementary center over to the intermediate side. So we started having conversations with not only our K-1-2 teachers, which we've been doing, but now so we're also including our grade 3 teachers, because really teaching phonemic awareness does not end when the kids leave 2nd grade. It really should follow through and continue on in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. So that's what we're looking at doing. I think we're going to see some really good results, but I don't have enough data really now to compare the kids, and especially with the year that we've had as far as being out and not being able to participate in small groups the way we would want to really hone in on individual skills with kids every single day like we did in 2019. I think we'll see some great results. So I look forward to that as we move forward. Our school was selected. Actually Patan reached out to us to participate in the Dyslexia Expansion Pilot Project, specifically because Donna Halpin and the IU, and then as she moved over to Patan, they knew the type of program that we had at Lehighton. They knew what our philosophy was. They knew that we had that good foundation in the letters training. And I think it's been a real nice partnership so far. So that's going to continue. And I can certainly share with the board, some of the examples of what that lesson would look like. I could send you some videos, not specifically from our teachers, but from, some of the professional development that we had received. But we're real excited about it. And I'm looking forward to getting back to some normalcy as we get back to our, in quotation marks, regular schedule next year, and be able to have those kids working with directly in small groups with our reading specialists, our paraprofessionals, our teachers being able to break up those groups, and those kids having a lot of movement, not only through their classroom, but through the pod of their grade levels. So does anybody have any questions on our kindergarten registration, the Dyslexia Expansion Pilot Project, or the upcoming ECRI trainings?
I do, Mr. Sublin. It's Larry. Does that 155 include our pre-K participants, or is that outside of that? Because I know last time we spoke about the total number, it was kind of they were kind of grandfathered into registration, right?
Yep.
So I didn't know. Go ahead.
Nope, that's a great question. That they are encompassed in that 155 number. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and you're seeing the same challenges that Mrs. Howland kind of elaborated on with her presentation concerning, what could we gather from this year? And this year was so difficult and so different. It's hard to gather up that information to figure out how the programs are helping to enhance our students. I mean, number one, from the special eds that she was talking about, and number two, is what are the results of the program, of how you've been influencing the kids and teaching them different ways to be able to, enhance their reading skills. I'm sure it is. And hopefully, like you say, we get back to the return of some normalcy, then we can see if the fruits of our labor are paying off in both of those fronts, and increasing our student comprehension and reading skills at your levels, and bringing our special ed students up and progressing as they should at the high school level. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And you're exactly right, Mr. Stern. I mean, I was thinking about that as Mrs. Howland was talking, and she's exactly right. It's a global issue as far as K to 12. And it really starts with us. And, as I had mentioned as well, some of the kids that are coming into kindergarten that we've met over the last couple of weeks, I mean, they're coming in already with some heavy duty needs, and we have to find a way to meet their needs. And at the same time, we got to be able to, get them into our program and get them started and start that foundation of reading. So yeah, and it's really hard for us because I love to compare data. I mean, I love to dig in and really hone in and figure out, why things might be happening, why things might not be happening. And we depend on, a lot of data to provide us with the direction on which way to go. And, we haven't been able to do that. We will get back to that. Absolutely. But when you are comparing apples to apples, you need that, I always say 3 years of really good, solid data to make a well-informed educational decision on which way you're going to go with things.
Does anyone else have any comments for Mr. Seblin or questions? I will say, as he's touched upon many topics there, and I know we will be looking as a district for next year. When the school year starts, we'll be going with assessments right from the beginning and trying to hone in on specific gaps that have been happening and created, And then with the new ESSERS grant, we will be taking a look at different programs during the school day, after school, and so forth to help the children gain on those gaps that they have due to the pandemic. Okay, anything for good of the order?
I have one.
Go ahead, Mr. Bradley.
Well, does anybody else want to go first?
I have no one else showing. That's fine. Go ahead.
At the last meeting, we discussed this SEL program's Moxie, and the committee was going to look into that, find out what needs to take place, whether or not there's value to getting one and passing it around through the district to allow that awareness to take place, and that there are resources in this world to help these parents and these students. Did anyone do any research on that? And did anyone get other information so that they can present it to this board so that we can allocate those funds to the budget as needed in the event that this committee feels that would be of value?
I did not look into any specifics, Mr. Bradley. I did look into the Moxie itself, but I did not look into the specifics with regards to the group and so forth. I know we are looking, and I know talking with Mrs. Cartwright and also with Mrs. Kistler, we're taking a look to see, like, once we got some data from the survey and, kind of proceed from there. But that it's still on the radar. It's nothing that has been, omitted or anything of that nature.
It looks, that's fine. I think we should actually make an effort. A quick Google search says it costs about $1,300, $1,400, and costs about $136 a month to have access to this resource, which has been proven to be beneficial. Maybe there's an opportunity to call them up and see if we can become part of their pilot program if they don't already have some data, if they don't have some information in that regard. The second order of the good of the order was the STEM program that we provided from the NEF. The first STEM program appeared to be successful on all sides, the NEF side and the heightened side. The second STEM program seemed to have stalled and stopped and ran into some issues. Can we get some information on that process, what happened, how the communication broke down, how that second program didn't meet the expectations that the NEF thought was going to meet and or Lee Heighton thought it was going to meet, and how that program was, a very costly program, but how we spent the money but didn't get the benefits that we were aiming for, and what happened there. Do we have any data to present today on that? And if not, can we come back at the next meeting and make sure that we have a full report of exactly what took place with that second NEF program? I spoke to Dr. Apu and other members of the NEF team, and they were definitely disappointed with the results.
Okay. I don't have anything tonight exactly for that, Mr. Bradley. When you're saying the second part of STEM, can you elaborate on that, like what you're meaning by that? Because I know we had first started and we were going through the whole process where we had with the community involved. We had everybody we were looking at with the Da Vinci Center. We had talked about with the NEF, with STEM and so forth, but it was all more or less a continuation. When you're saying the second part, what exactly are you meaning by that?
You're correct. The continuation, the second $1.x million payment, I think it was 1.31 is what I had the NEF review as to why that money was spent, what was spent for, what did we get out of it. The Auditor General's report shows that we didn't get everything we were expected to get. So in communicating with them, we're just trying to better understand what the board needs to do to ensure that the monies used by our community are spent efficiently and wisely. So when I heard rumblings from their side of the puzzle, I'm seeking our side of the puzzle so that we can put these pieces of the puzzle together and find out what took place. Now that I have most of their side, I think it would be valuable to have some of our side added to the conversation. And then from there, we go back and forth maybe one or two more times just to ensure that things are corrected, because there is a difference of opinion and possibly expectation from the two parties. And then we weed it out from there. I mean, you just want to look at why the Auditor General felt that all that money was spent, but we didn't get the benefits that we were looking for. And after talking to NEF, I can see why they feel that way. And then maybe we can figure out why or what happened.
Okay, we can put that on for the next meeting. Like I said, I don't have anything right at my fingertips for tonight, but we can take a look and do like when we started and so forth.
Did you get any of the emails earlier in the week regarding this matter from anybody else in our organization? Tim?
No, I did not.
Okay. In the future, I'll make sure I copy you specifically. I would have thought that providing information to the rest of the board and the administration, it would have went through the proper channel. But I will circumvent that other procedure that's not working until we get it working, and I'll carbon copy you directly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for good of the order this evening?
I just have a question, I guess, for Mr. Bradley, since you did talk with Abu, who I'm not sure, I mean, if you're referencing Dr. Katan or who you're referencing, if you could provide a summary of the conversation you had with them and the information that they presented, so we can make sure that we're all on the same page.
Sure,
if that's possible.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great idea, and it is Dr. Katan. We spoke at length. When you called the NEF, he actually answered the phone, which is fantastic. And we also spoke to other, took references from other districts that went through the program that they presented. There was also, give me a second, I'll pull up the other guy's name that I spoke to.
Yeah, I think you referenced it in your email.
Yeah, so obviously you did get the email. That's nice, but let me just pull it up for a second. I'll see if I can find it. Foundation. If these meetings were in person, it would be much better for everyone involved.
And they eventually will be, sir. So,
and whose decision is that?
It is ours.
Good. So we should make it right now. So
the next board meeting is in person. So
there you go.
And we'll begin to move forward from that point on. Thank you.
Art Stellar was the individual that I spoke to.
Yes, Art Stellar. There's been many a conversation between the administration and Mr. Stellar. So it'd be interesting to hear your side of the conversations with Mr. Stellar and Dr. Katan. So that would be awesome. So
if there has been many conversations between these two individuals and our administration, and it's our responsibility as a board to oversee that administration, I highly recommend that those communications be shared with this board so that we can review them.
And there's also been, and I don't know if the Auditor General will share the interviews that were conducted concerning this particular activity, but there was extensive interviews that occurred concerning the NEF issues with Lee Heighton and the National Education Foundation or something.
And how do you know that, Larry?
Because I was interviewed, sir.
You were interviewed because you were part of the board at the time when all this activity was taking place?
Yes.
Okay. And did you share that data with the rest of your board since you were just one member of that board, or did you keep that information?
It was an investigation, so I didn't feel it was appropriate for me to share any of that information that I gave the Auditor General. They were supposed to share the information back. So,
but now that the Auditor General has presented its report, I'm going to make the suggestion right now that we, as an academic affairs agenda item and as our committee of 3 members, seek all communications between the NEF.
There was no communication.
There was communication. You just said there was.
It was a verbal interview.
I understand that interview was.
That's the only information that I have, is a verbal interview I had with the Auditor General's office.
Larry, let's start from the beginning before Mr. Cleaver tries to shut you up.
No.
Let's start from the beginning. Hold on. There's
no,
communications. Hold on. There's communications, written and verbal, between NEF and our administration. These emails were presented back and forth from both parties, things that were sent to us from NEF and things that were sent from our administration to the NEF. And both sets of those communications should be reviewed by this board at this time, because we do see a discrepancy, and the best way to not argue about information or data is to just collect the data. So once we collect the data, we can then discuss the data. But prior to that would just be hyperbole. So why don't we, you, me, and Rita, agree that since there was some consternation between NEF and Lehighton, since payments were made between NEF and Lehighton, and some receivables may or may not have been received in that regard, let us collect the data as the government oversight board, pull the data from our administration, and let's review it. You can do it in executive session. If you're concerned about redactions, you can have the administration redact it. We don't need to do a right to know. We can save everybody a lot of money and just the board review our administration's interaction between someone we spent $1.3 million to and the Auditor General's claim that not all the receivables were provided. And from the NEF, it looks like a breakdown in communication occurred, and that's something that we can definitely review and prevent and rectify inside of our government agency, because we don't want to have miscommunication. There's an old saying that there's money in chaos, just not for those writing the checks. And that's pretty common in many government entities, and it appears to be common to ours. So that is my suggestion. If you and Rita can get on board with that idea, that we as a government agency and board should review the communications between these two organizations, our administration and our vendor, NEF, to ensure that we got what we paid for and what was going on, that'd be great. I think that would be beneficial. I think that's what the Auditor General is suggesting, since we are the authority to rectify this situation after they discovered some of these things were a problem. Can I get Rita and you to agree that we need to collect all the communications between these two entities for our review as either the Academic Affairs Committee or
Actually,
as a board?
this was, and most of the information that was between NEF and Lehighton was through Mr. Fike, which we don't have access to that information
Yeah, we
anymore.
We do. He's part of
No, I don't think we do.
Well, why don't you? Because he's
Because
part
we-
of the board. He's part of the government agency. I agree that Mr. Fike was definitely integral to this process. He had a government email address that's contained and retained by the CLIU. I've checked with the CLIU. They have access to it.
Well, I'm so
we
glad
also
that
have.
you double check everyone, Mr.
You
Bradley.
got
So
it, sir. I do.
all of the information was presented previously. Now, if we want to go back
We're
and
gonna
dig up the files,
it's
I know
already been presented.
Mr. Cleaver has the files. If
If
we
it's
want,
already
you
been
want to look
presented.
at them, have at it.
Yeah, that's
okay?
fine. I agree, but we have to make sure
All right.
we authorize it, because otherwise we're being blocked.
No, if you want to look at it, you can look at it. I don't think there's a problem with that, right, Mr. Cleaver?
Yeah, so just provide
no
it to us.
problem at all. If he,
No
maybe
problem
he
at
should-
all.
It would probably even be wise of him to ask Mr. Stellar and Mr. Catan for their emails and communication.
We did, and they're providing it, so we're
Okay,
good.
well, I look forward to
But-
getting the recap of the conversation, the summary, and the emails from those two individuals, and then
agree.
we can
I
start
think that's
moving forward.
I think that's
So
important.
let's
But before,
let's
hold on,
let's
Mr.
wait.
Mr. Stern,
No,
you're
I'm
being
gonna
all
hold-
stubborn again.
I'm
You're
gonna-
being
no, I'm
arrogant.
gonna-
You're jumping all
no,
over
I'm gonna
me.
hold you. No, I'm going to
Hold
hold
them
you
accountable.
responsible.
Let's
I'm gonna
get
hold
the
you
information from
accountable
our
for
district
providing-
first.
Okay, we're done. Thank you.
Why are you done? We want to get the information from our district, sir.
I can't even talk to you because you're the one had gone out to these other agencies and
Of course I
collected all
did.
this
It's my
information.
job.
So then why don't you need to provide it? We have a problem when you always speak that you have this information, but it never gets provided back to us to review. This
I
isn't the first
emailed-
incident.
we
This
emailed
is
you.
probably the third or fourth or fifth incident
We
about
emailed
that.
you. We gave it to
You
you.
emailed
admitted
a
to get the email.
picture.
Yeah, you
You
emailed. You got
emailed
the
a picture.
Damn
So
straight.
what?
Yeah.
So what?
Well, if you
So
don't feel
let's
that's
get the
important,
information from Art Steller and Dr. Catan
If
and
you
the
don't
documentation
feel-
from your conversation if you want to give it.
if
And then
you
we'll move
don't
forward.
feel that's important, that's fine. I felt it to
Okay,
be
keep
important.
reading.
So I'm
keep,
looking
keep
for.
reiterating what you're saying.
Are you going to
we can have a-
authorize Mr. Cleaver to provide the information you just promised he would provide?
He has it. He'll give it to you.
Good. Make sure it gets to us.
Thank
Me,
you.
and Rita need to have a copy of it. I don't think Rita was on the board back then, so she should have a copy of it. I'm lobbying to make sure she gets a copy of it. I get a copy of it.
You don't
Obviously,
have to
you had
keep
a copy of it.
reiterating the same thing over
I
and
do
over
if you're
again.
gonna shut
Everybody
down the
heard
meeting.
you.
Are you ready to shut
Everybody
down the meeting
heard
now?
you.
Are you
Everybody heard you. No, we're going to public
You were-
comment. Thank
Good,
you.
because you were on this board for the 5 years
Oh.
that this program took place.
And this
The
is what I
Auditor General
mean,
has
Mr.
spanked us
Bradley.
for it.
This is what I mean, Mr. Bradley. Can you please shut your mouth?
Absolutely not. This will be exposed. It'll be transparent. Oops.
Public comment? Is there any public for comment? So we give them an opportunity.
The host has just muted me. This
Yes,
will not
because
be.
giving
It will
the
not.
public
No, I'm talking to Larry.
opportunity.
You can't mute me. I'm talking to Larry. So Larry, no. This will be
No, you
transparently
deserve to be
exposed.
muted because we're
No, you
giving the
don't.
public an opportunity
No
to
one
comment.
deserves
If
to
you
be
don't do
muted
it,
as a
you're
board member.
preventing it.
No one
Yes.
deserves to be muted as a board member
Yeah,
when we're
you're
having a
going-
discussion. It's
okay.
$1.3 million, Larry. $1.3 million.
Here
It
we
does
go
not
again.
deserve to
Bible?
be muted. It deserves to be discussed.
This Bible?
We're gonna
I just
do it.
wanted to thank the administration. Thank you, Mr. Seblin. Thank you, Mrs. Howland. Thank you, Mr. Cleaver. Thank you, Mr. Tack, for what you guys are doing. Thank you for listening to people's concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, Mr. Tech, there are no other requests for comment.
Okay, then we'll have the meeting adjourned.
I would like to finish the comment that I was talking to Larry. Since public comment is over, Larry, would you please recognize that we, as a board, have the responsibility to oversee our subordinate administration?
Would you please,
That
as a
$1.3
board
million
member, stop the reiterating of facts that you continue to speak? You just go over and over and over again. You can say it once. We're not here to filibuster, other than you are, maybe, but the rest of us aren't. We got another meeting to get to. So let's please proceed to that next meeting. And it's going to take a while to record this meeting. So the next meeting is going to be delayed if anybody's joining that one as well. So thank you.
Well, Larry, if you did that, where is the data that took place?